Free dahlia plants from cuttings. Yesterday I did one and a thunderstorm came up and I had to stop the video. You're going to need rooting hormone, a pair of scissors, some water, and a 6-pack that's been cleaned and washed, a tray that's been cleaned and washed, and then I use seed starter mix. It's sterile, there's no diseases in it. You need a pencil to punch a hole in the center of each one of these to put the cutting. You can see that even though it's soaked overnight, it's still a little dry in the center. And the reason you punch a hole in it is when you take a cutting and dip it in water and dip it in the rooting hormone and shake it off any excess, when you put it in the hole, it won't rub off the rooting hormone. If this was the cutting and you had rooting hormone on the end and you pushed it into soil, it would wipe it all off. So you have a hole to put it in. If you spin your little pencil, sometimes it'll clear out all the little place that might be dry. Like that. So now we'll go get some cuttings. I took the covers off of these. What you want is a cutting long enough that it will work. And that is about as short as they would be. You can pinch these off or you can cut them. And I'm going to get that one. And you think you're doing damage to the plant, you're not, because down inside of that leaf cluster right there, you'll have 2 buds come up. And if you do this with your normal dahlias, just pinch out the center, those 2 will come up, and instead of having 1 flower, shoot that'll flower, you'll have 2. So that's 2 of them. I've got one in the tray. And I'm going to come over here because sometimes a dahlia comes up with a whole lot of shoots. And here's one that's come up with a whole lot of shoots, and you don't need all those shoots. And I'm taking the biggest ones off. And then we'll take them inside and do the rest. And you would take the outer leaves off this anyway, because it doesn't have any roots, and so it can't supply moisture to this, and with all that leaf area it requires more moisture, so you take off some of these bigger leaves so that it doesn't require as much moisture. Now on these cuttings that I cut off closer to the tuber, I can get rid of the lower leaves, but just cutting them off that way. Now if you already had some rooting hormone and it sat around for a while, it's gotten a little compacted. You want to shake it up, pop it on a table and shake it up real good so that when you open it up, it's all powder. See how that's light fluffy powder? Then all you have to do is take this cutting and stick it in water so that the rooting hormone will stick to it, and then you got to flick off some of it because you don't need a lot. And you put it in the hole and you put the soil around it, and 1, 2, 3. It is a lot easier to do this with 2 hands. And if you forget to take a lower leaf off, you can always take one off later. That's all you got to do. And then you put a dome over it to hold the moisture in. The soil is wet. The plants right now cannot stand sunlight, so I would put it down on that shelf right there and let it go until I see growth. When I see growth, I know I have roots. Then you would introduce this into a little bit of light, maybe 45 minutes worth, and then maybe an hour and 20 minutes, maybe 3 hours, and you will see the growth coming. We're talking 3-4 weeks from now. And then you can slowly take it and put it outside if you want. And you have 6 dahlias that will grow and grow you a tuber. Now I'm going to do videos on how to do the same thing with azaleas. Now I took my spray bottle of just pure water and wet the leaves down because they're, it's going to take some root action before it can get any moisture. And they're getting a little bit of filtered light through here right now. But when I put the tray that belongs here back here, it will block it. So there'll be no sunlight. It's cooler down at the floor. Heat does rise and they won't get too hot and they will survive. I put this tray of tomato plants back here, and that blocks the sun off of that. See how the sun can't reach it, so it won't get too hot. Because if you put a cover on something and put it in the sun, it'd be like baking bread in there. It would kill them. They'd be dead in a day if sunlight came through there and hit those leaves with no roots. I mean, you would kill a healthy plant that had roots. If you put them in something with no air and let that radiate and solar energy build a temperature up there to 140, 50 degrees. Got to think about these things. These are all the dahlias that I didn't see any growth on, and rather than throw them away, I just put them in here, and you can see that one's growing, that one's growing. There's 2 here. This many's growing on these. See, they'll surprise you. And that one's not doing anything, and this was a real tall one, and I didn't have another flat big container. And even that dried up thing, see that? See it's coming out? They want to live. All you gotta do is give them a chance. I gotta put a little water in here. They're getting a little bit on the dry side. And you can also take these cuttings when they get a bigger. Just remember, on any plant, like that's the first cutting I took. Now this will send up 2 shoots there, and you'll have 2. And if you do it really early on, well, it's not too bad there, but if it had been cut off there, you'd have 2 shoots coming up from the base. And then those could come up, and you could plant one of these in a whiskey barrel, and those would come up, and then you could cut them, pinch them out again, and you'd have 2 shoots here, then you'd have 4 here, and then if you did those, you'd have 8 shoots coming out one tuber. Just a thought.